Welcome to February, everybody. How you doing? Welcome into the Monday Smash alongside Ira Schoffel. My name is Tom Lang. It is time to smash it up on a Monday night here on Warchant TV. Tonight's show is presented, as always, by State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. More on Russ in a minute. But I think, Ira, I hear everybody in the coaching office for Florida State going and taking a breath because in the modern day, and modern, I mean the last 3-4 years, of college football, this is about the only time of the year in which a coaching staff can breathe just for a second before they got to get back into recruiting, portal, tour of duty, spring practice. Florida State has been doing some work in both the portal and on the recruiting front the last month.
Yeah, man, if you think about it, obviously the season was the season, and then the month of December was probably worse than the season because you had recruiting, the portal, getting a team ready for a bowl game with all the crap that was going on there. Then right after that, it's wide open for recruiting and transfer portal season. They brought in over a dozen transfers in January, and then you have and then the junior days start up. I think the first junior day was the 21st, 20th, and then 27th, and this past week, and then another junior day. So yeah, you're right. The recruiting dead period has started. So from now until March 3rd, I believe, they can talk to recruits on the phone. They can text them. They can email them. They can get them on FaceTime, Slack, whatever the hell they want to do. Yeah. But they can't actually – are you sure? They can't do FaceTime?
No, I was shaking my head like I'm sure that they're racing to their phones to do that. That was a sarcastic shake of the head.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, no, I thought maybe the NCAA at one point the NCAA like you could email but you couldn't text, or you could text but you couldn't email. It's like what? But yeah, man, they're pretty much right now electronic communications they can do, but they can't be in person now for the next month. So it'll give them a little bit of time. I doubt they'll take any vacation time. My guess is they got the tour duty stuff going on. Mm-hmm. So, and then the workouts. And so it never really stops, but yeah, it's got to be better than it has been for the last several months.
For sure. There was a rule at one time too, where you couldn't initiate a phone call, but you could accept one. And so it's goofy. But Florida State has been doing some serious work behind the scenes. Also here, my compatriot on the right side of the screen, Ira's been doing some serious work. He drove to Alabama this weekend for the Senior Bowl. Ira, I'm going to ask you about that in just a minute, but it's nice to have you back riding shotgun for Monday Smash. Last week you weren't here because you caught wind of some developments. And now that that's kind of over with, would you mind sharing with the class what happened close to about 7 p.m. this time last Monday?
Yeah, man, I forgot about that. Feels like a month ago, not last week. Yeah. But yeah, man, it was probably a little after 6 o'clock. I found out that sounded like that they were filing or had filed their amendment. Florida State had filed their amendment to their lawsuit against the ACC, and then it was a matter of like getting it and then writing it. But I realized, man, there's no way I could just sit on this because I didn't know who else might get it, and so I had to call you and be like, hey, man, I can't do the show. So did you just have Michael on for the whole show?
Yeah, Michael. It turned into a recruiting chat for about 40 minutes.
Which is probably better. People were probably happier with that anyway. But so I had to work on that. And I'm glad I did, man, because it took me 6 hours. Thankfully, no one else did get it. So I was the only one. Yeah. Warchant was the only ones to get it that night. But we did, we broke that story that night, and everybody else got it the next day.
It was an interesting Monday night. I remember because I rolled over and I heard something in the kitchen, and it was like 1:30, and I see this. I'm like, it was just posted. I'm like, geez, Ira's had to parse through all kinds of legalese for the last however many hours to break that particular story. Florida State and the ACC lawsuit, that continues to go on. We'll monitor that as the weeks and months, hopefully not too much longer. Maybe, Ira, they get to the settlement table and they can put an end to this earlier, but we shall see. You were in Mobile. Florida State had 3 players at the Senior Bowl last week. Some other players as well at the East-West Shrine game, I believe 3-3, as they're preparing for the NFL draft. In terms of the game itself, 2 Florida State Seminoles played. One was Braden Fisk. One was Jaheim Bell. What was that experience like, Ira? Florida State hasn't been sending guys in 2s and 3s and maybe more than double digits this year. Certainly it would seem that way in quite some time to the NFL draft. So what was it like to get back to the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, the last time I went actually was the year EJ won the MVP. Wow. And I think Vince Williams had a really good week that week. Vince Williams was he's like one of the all-time great Senior Bowl stories because coming out of that season, he was a starter at Florida State on a really good football team, but he wasn't, I don't know if a lot of people thought he was going to be a high draft pick. And then he showed up at the Senior Bowl. He was an alternate. Somebody didn't show up, and so they called him in that week. And I remember seeing him at the Senior Bowl, and I was like, who is this guy? A lot of those guys, man, once their college career is over, because now they don't have to worry about school, and they could just focus on football training, just weight room work. He showed up, man. He was ripped. He looked like a different guy physically at the Senior Bowl, and then at Pro Day, obviously ends up with the Steelers, has a great NFL career. But I think the Senior Bowl was big for him. It really, I think, opened some doors for him. EJ was MVP. Ponder had been MVP a couple years before that. I didn't cover it. I would assume they sent several guys. You know what? I don't think, when the 13 team, a lot of those guys were eligible for the Senior Bowl. I remember the Senior Bowl getting pissed off because a bunch of those guys declined.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why we didn't go. And then, yeah, man, for like 15, 16 on, there were no players to go. And then, maybe if you had one guy go, maybe it wasn't worth the trip. So, but yeah, it was really good to get over there. I went over with Don Juan Moore, who's a photographer and a really good guy. He covers it every year for his business for photos and trading cards and things like that. So I went over and I was a little bit worried because as soon as I got there, I heard Johnny wasn't going to play. And then, you just don't know. I figured Braden Fisk would play, but you don't know for sure. Some guys pull out or opt out on the day of it because the practices are seen as the more important time. But he and Jaheim both played, and I was able to get both of them after the game and do interviews and stories. The story on Braden Fisk is already up on the site with a video. Put that up yesterday, and I've got a story with Jaheim Bell coming as well in a video. So those will be coming on the site maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, the thing with all three of those players, Ira, is that they really advanced their professional cause. Johnny had an excellent week of practice.
Yeah.
You had people remarking that he's so quick out of his breaks. His burst off the line of scrimmage is incredible. His hands look great, and you could see it against really good players, including a member of the Georgia secondary, which makes you feel like in the opt-out situation, what could have been. He did his job at that point. In the game itself, in the interview, we have it on Warchant TV. We have it on warchant.com, the full story. But Braden had to play a lot of reps, Ira, probably more than he ever had to play at Florida State because the rotation at Florida State's so aggressive. But he was one of four defensive linemen. He played a little bit at defensive tackles, and he played a little bit at end. He had to switch teams the night before. He was in great spirits, Ira, and he's got every reason to be in great spirits because he was making waves on Wednesday and Thursday, and then he had a really good game. So much so that the broadcast, Charles Davis said he was the MVP of the game during the broadcast, which what a week for Braden it was.
Yeah, it's funny. Both of them, I would say the same thing about him. Well, in different ways. Johnny, it's funny that people are saying that because I honestly think Johnny Wilson's a guy you kind of have to see in person to really grasp how impressive it is to be that size and to run the way he does. Like, I think there's people don't think he can really run, but man, at that size, to the way he gets in and out of breaks, as smooth as he is, he's an exceptional athlete. And I'm curious to see how he does once he gets to a pro day, once he goes to the combine, because again, the more that they see him up close, I think they're going to be more impressed by him. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, he did have a good week. And I heard he tweaked something. I mean, that's why he didn't play on Saturday. I don't know for sure if that's true. But he didn't play in the game on Saturday. But Braden Fisk, the reason I say somewhat similar is, man, sometimes you don't know a defensive lineman's numbers, sometimes guys run down plays from behind, which he does some. And okay, is that a tackle? Is that an impactful play, or is he just running down, is he a vulture that's kind of, jumping on a tackle 3 yards down the line of, just hustling after the play is really over. But I thought, man, he was fantastic. He was good in practice, obviously, but I thought he was fantastic in the game. I mean, he anytime he was single blocked, man, he was a menace. Whether it was bull rushing or swim moves, and even when he was double teamed, man, he really made those guys work. And I just could not have been more impressed by him. And I think that's, to your point, yeah, man, I think he definitely made himself some money. And Jaheim, I think with the week, he didn't do a ton in the game. He only played the first half. He had a 16-yard catch called back, catch and run called back by a penalty, had a 20-yard catch later. That was a nice, both those plays were nice plays. But he skipped out the second half. I think he got tweaked something and just didn't want to play through it. So, but yeah, I think all three of those guys definitely helped their cause.
Yeah, Jaheim is one that we haven't talked a little bit too much about, just in terms of maybe the atmosphere around Jaheim Bell's week. I saw, obviously he made a couple of plays in practice and one-on-ones, and that's going to happen. Thankfully, the way that we see practice, we see those one-on-ones every day. But did you get the sense that, Jaheim did, what he needed to do to at least prove to the scouts that, hey, I was banged up for a huge portion of the season in 2023, and watch me work a little bit now that I'm a little bit more explosive.
Yeah, and that's what the story I've got about him is mostly about. I talked to him. I actually talked to his mother. She was at the game. Family was at the game, so I talked to his mother as well. And we talked about that fact that he was not healthy for much of the year. And I even talked to them about opting out, and not playing in the Orange Bowl. And if he had been healthy, his mother said, "Look, if he had been healthy, he dealt with that ankle or whatever it was all year. If he had been healthy, she basically said, I would have talked to him and said, you probably need to play, and he said, just he was so upset about the snub, but then also not being healthy. But those guys, and I think, what we saw in these games is a lot of those guys were not healthy late in the season. This one, the East West Shrine game, but they used that time to rehab, and now they're giving themselves the best chance at the next level. So it sucked for the players who stayed. It sucked for Florida State fans, but I also get it why some of those guys felt like they had to get healthy because this is their careers on the line.
This is almost like a fantasy football style question, because with fantasy football, it might be somebody from your rival team. Like if I'm a Bucks fan and I go back to the Central days, so I grab a Packer. It's kind of weird, but you work with it because you want that guy to go 8 for 150. In a way, as a Nole, you're kind of watching kids. If you're a Nole fan and then the NFL is like this other thing, you just hope they go to good situations where they fit and they can blossom and have long careers. Vince Williams is a great story because Carlos was the only Williams that anybody talked about. And then Vince is the one that has the long NFL career. Is there a guy from this particular team, Ira, maybe with somebody you covered in Mobile, is there a guy from this team that you're excited to go see play at the next level? Like what his career turns into more than some others, maybe?
I kind of wonder about I don't know, man. I kind of wonder about Renardo Green. I kind of think Renardo Green might be a guy that surprises us by playing 10 years in the NFL. He really still hasn't played a ton of corner at college. His first 2 or 3 years at Florida State were basically a wash. And then he really, came into his own these last 2 years. I think he's a hard worker. I like the way he carries himself. I'm not going to get into his personal business too much, but like I saw the car he got into one day after a practice, and it wasn't the $100,000, ride that some of these guys in the NIL era can, and I'm sure he could if he wanted to, so I just think he's a mature guy. I think he's very focused and driven, and I have a feeling he's going to, he's one if I was putting my chips out there and just trying to like hit a long shot, because I don't know if most people think he's going to be a guy that plays 10 years.
Yeah.
I have a feeling he might be.
Yeah, for me, the guy I'm interested in to watch is Kalen DeLoach, just because of the speed. Like sometimes, in some ways, the NFL is like a simpler league. It's a simpler game. Like I use the Williams brothers. Carlos at Florida State was a good player. It was hard to find a home for him, a specific position that worked. Won an ACC championship as a linebacker in 2012. Ends up being a running back, has an overtime walk-off touchdown against Clemson in 2014. And then for that brief stint, it was straight ahead speed, and he was a home run threat for the Bills. And it was like, man, it almost looks easier for him at this level than it did in college. I feel like Kalen's speed's going to play, Ira. I think that's really going to be a weapon, because the NFL is just about how quickly can you get point A to point B, and Kalen's speed was on display. And if he does that at the NFL level, I think it almost elevates some of the plays he made at Florida State post fact. But I can't wait to watch him play and see how he develops.
Yeah, that's a good one too. And I think Jane asked about Jarian Jones. I think he's another guy. And again, anytime Jarian Jones comes up, I always give credit to T-Buck, because we were at a practice 3 years ago when everybody was kind of down on Jarian Jones, and Terrell Buckley was, I don't know if it was when he was being honored at Florida State or if he just came back to visit. I think I think he might've been like the honorary captain of the spring game or something happened, but he was around, and he had recruited Jarian Jones at Mississippi State, and he said, he's like, everybody's sleeping on this kid. He can play. And sure enough, he tremendous senior season. But yeah, Kalen DeLoach is, I need to go back and look. In my mind, is Geno Hayes a good comp? Because
yeah,
body size and the running ability, and because Geno's a guy. It was funny when Geno Hayes was being recruited by Florida State out of Madison County. Mickey Andrews, I knew, loved him, and Geno came to a practice. First time I saw him at a practice, I was like, and Geno was like a 4-star, big time, And the first time I saw him, I was like, that's him,
yep.
just. and then, obviously great college career. And then but I wonder because I wonder about Kalen's durability, but to your point about guys having roles and Kalen obviously is a guy that can run sideline to sideline and he hits when he gets there.
He does, and he knows the location. It's all about the placement of the hit and the Clemson play, the play of the season. More than it is anything else. The disguise is great, but you got to place it right, or else it's a sack, and it's not what it turned out to be, which is a touchdown. Gino's a great comp, Ira. So he was 6'1", 226. I'll look up Deloach's stats in a minute. But as a Bucs fan, I was very enthusiastic about that pick because the Bucs got him in late. They got him in the 6th round, 175th pick, and I thought, man, what a steal! This is a high floor player. Who knows what he's going to be? Ended up leading the Bucs in tackles, I think, one season, but 400 career tackles, 10 sacks in the league. I think, that's a great potential comp. I like you.
By the way, may he rest in peace.
May he rest in peace. Yeah,
tragic.
It's bizarre, to
Terrible.
think about that, because that was he was one of the players that played at my time at the school too, which is just every day you're grateful for when stuff when things like that happen. But I'm on your side with the Johnny Wilson. We've talked about this a lot at practice over the years, and he's quicker than you think. That to be able to motor at that size, he was the first guy to a spot down the field pretty often in college.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's Mike Evans' clone because he's taller and he can't be as fast as Mike. But there's something to rangy people not looking as quick as they are because of their sheer size. I'm fascinated to see what Johnny becomes at the next level.
I think it's just an assumption. I just think it's an assumption that we've seen what guys certain sizes run like, and you just don't think he's going to be able to run that fast. But I think there's so much more that goes to being a receiver. It's funny. I ran into Kes. I feel like I'm name dropping here, but I ran into Kes McCorvey the other day, and I was just talking for a couple of minutes, asking what he thought about these new receivers who are here, and he said, it's just so hard. He's talked to some of them, and he's seen them a little bit, but he hasn't really seen them on the field yet. And it's funny when you talk to Kes about receivers, you just know his knowledge. And this is a guy that's coached professionally in college receivers and obviously played at a high level. But he's like, I need to see not just how they run and how they move, but how they play in space, how they find space. There's so many things that you need to see about a receiver besides height, weight, and speed in hands. And from that standpoint, again, Johnny's got to be a little bit more consistent with catching. It sounds like he had a great week, though, the Senior Bowl. I don't think there was any issues with that at all.
No, the reporters were saying his hands are immaculate. And I'm like, well, okay. I mean, you'll turn on the tape and say maybe not so much, but that means that the improvement was there. And I really think, Ira, if he doesn't get hurt, not that he would have caught every single target that was within his catch radius, but hands catches this year, he was better at that in 23 than he was in 22. I thought he was making some more of those routine plays that he seemed to be not making prior. So we've got months to break that down. The NFL draft is the last week in April. They did it in May for a couple of years, and they said the hell with that. So it's last week in April. We've got the Combine coming up at the end of the month. That'll be fun to cover as well. Pro Day at Florida State is going to be a who's who. Actual big-time coaches are going to be showing up on campus. They might even send NFL Network to put a desk on the field. It's been a while since that happened. We'll be covering that for you at warchant.com. In about 15, 20 minutes, Michael Langston will be joining the show tonight. One final junior day. It's essentially the last round of questions that you can offer up to Michael before the dead period. So feel free to get those questions in the hopper. I see we've got a lot of questions for Ira and I, so we will get to those in just a moment after 15 seconds of loving for our guy, State Farm agent Russ Vorhis.
Contact Russ Vorhis for an auto quote today.
I feel like 15 seconds of loving would be like a hair metal album. I don't know. Anyway, Russ Vorhis is a State Farm agent who is not just about the insurance game. He'll talk Florida State football with you. He'll talk Florida State sports with you. You could try him at either of those two numbers. Those are the two brick and mortar operations at Jacksonville Beach and Orange Park. But as you know by now, Russ Vorhis covers the entire state of Florida, the entire state of Georgia, and Alabama. Find out more information at russvorhis.com on the podcast. That's RUSSVORHIS.com. Ira, he's one of the OGs at Warchant.
Yeah, he is. And a longtime Florida State fan, longtime Florida State supporter, guy that puts his money behind it. And I know he's excited about this upcoming season. I'm sure he's excited about baseball and softball, which are about to start. He's probably not real excited about basketball. And he actually played basketball, but I don't think he's real fired up about that right now. But yeah, Russ Vorhis is just a good guy, good Nole, and knows the insurance business inside and out.
Looks like we're getting some legal questions. Put your lawyer hat on, because here comes a question from Brett, Ira. Probably too early to discuss, but the court determined Dartmouth athletes are employees of the school. How soon will all scholarship athletes deemed to be so? Sorry if it's a duplicate post. Ira, so just in general, speaking to the people you do, is that where this thing is going? Because there's two fights. There's Florida State trying to get out of the ACC. There's the NCAA taking on a lawsuit, it seems, every 10 minutes over what exactly a student athlete is. What's the sense of it you get, if anything, when talking to school and university officials and people like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a school of thought that it might go to that, might go to like an employee model. I think most people do not want that to happen. I think the preferred approach, and this is again just from hearing from other people, I can't tell you all the legal reasons, but they're really hoping there'll be like a special class designation for these student athletes, where they're kind of a hybrid of an employee, but also a student athlete, an amateur athlete or something like that, to where, because once you become an employee, there are a whole lot of other things that come into play. It's going to need to be the revenue sharing idea. If you go that route, and then you've got collective bargaining, there's a lot of complications with all this. I mean, I guess the bottom line, what I'm saying is there's not really none of these are perfect solutions. This is a very unique situation where we took a class of people who were deemed amateurs and not employees, and now we're paying them. And now there's all this money here, and now they've got to figure out how to make it work. That's why they've wanted Congress to get involved. They do want to create like a special class for them. But I mean, it's anybody's guess how this is going to play out. And as Brett brings up at this point, I don't know that people expected this judge to rule the way he did, or he or she. And so now here we are with this. And so now it's just there's a couple of other lawsuits out there. There's several other lawsuits out there from an NCAA standpoint that could mean, billions of dollars in damages and back pay and all kinds of stuff that really we don't know how any of that's going to shake out.
So let me add something else, a different wrinkle to all this, Ira. What do you make of that Friday report that the SEC and the Big Ten are now partnering up? It almost seems like that they're trying to get out in front of the entire mess that's coming with the NCAA, reclassify football and take over the world. They say that they are not doing anything to usurp the power of the NCAA. Right. But why do I get the suspicion, Ira, that that's exactly what they're doing when you have these two power players getting together and deciding to divide up the world?
Yeah, I don't trust them at all to look out for anybody other than themselves. They've proven, their history proves that. I'm surprised somehow Jack Swarbrick didn't show up at the meeting too. And the SEC, the Big Ten, and Notre Dame. We'll see how that plays out. My guess is they'll somehow be taken care of. But yeah, man, this is, it just feels like this is where it's been going for a long time, no matter how much everybody denies it. The big question, talking to people at FSU, Michael Alford and different people at other schools feel the same way. The big concern everybody has is you've got this big rush with football to professionalize football and whatever shape that takes. And this is probably a step towards that path, but we still don't know what that's going to mean for the other sports, the Olympic sports that we all love. Florida State softball fans, you and Jamie are big Florida State softball fans. People love the soccer team. People love tennis and baseball, whatever you are into. It's that we don't know how that's all going to be impacted by this. And everybody's fired up about football and these guys getting money and professionalizing it. And there's going to be some unintended consequences. So these next couple of years, I think, are just going to be even more wild than probably the last couple.
No, it'll make your head spin because you've got so many different fights. For Florida State specifically, too, you've got one extra layer to this that the member institutions of the SEC and the Big Ten do not, which is Florida State wants to be in one of those two places. So they're trying to get out from where they are to be one of the two power players or be underneath the banner, the flag of one of the two power players in the SEC or the Big Ten, so that programs like softball, soccer, and others can continue to compete with the Joneses. Softball begins on Thursday this week, and we've got more coverage of that. We'll tell you more about that in just a little bit. But yeah, Ira, so Florida State's trying to get out. they're trying to divide the world up, and you got the TV networks that are in cahoots with the SEC and the Big Ten. They're proxies essentially for ESPN and Fox, and there's CBS and NBC have implications too and ties to the Big Ten. So it's a mess. And then you got the NCAA's very existence in question. So, I mean, it's anybody's guess how it's all going to shake. Throw out there the fact that, live TV rights for sports is kind of in question. Is it really a bubble? And you've got yourself, I mean, I don't even know how a person like Michael Alford or a TV network executive sleeps, because you have no idea what the system's going to look like a year from now.
No, man, and there is a lot of concern and a lot of I guess I wouldn't say fear, because I think they figure that there's got to be this is such a big institution, such a big industry, that they'll figure out something. Yeah. But yeah, man, I don't think anybody knows for sure how it's going to play out. I mean, nobody really knows how it's going to all play out.
Well, back to the on the ground stuff, because Florida State's building up quite a roster for 2024, and the flip that they've done in terms of Ira, we were talking a month ago, 6 weeks ago, like what's the win probability for Florida State or the over under total for the 12-game season? It's gone up and away, and Florida State Newcomer interviews as a part of that. Charlie is asking, and thank you, Charlie, you're helping us promo what's coming up on the site and the channel this week. When is the next set of new player interviews? Well, this week it is Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So pardon me for a moment as I list who is available. On Wednesday, you've got Jalen Lucas from Indiana. That's the special teams ace as well as a running back. Marvin Jones Jr., for the first time as a Florida State Seminole, will speak on Wednesday. Sione Lolohea will speak as well. That's a big-time defensive end get from Oregon State. Florida State landed his services last month. Cam Davis. Ira, people are fired up about Cam Davis. We put a video out there last week on the channel. It did huge numbers. People are excited because Cam Davis looks like, Ira, he's about 25 years old. So he'll speak for the first time. Any names that pop up to you that first day? I mean, that seems like a pretty good list people to get acquainted with.
That is a good group. And the Cam Davis excitement probably rivals early 2000s shirtless Greg Jones picks. People love when a guy is just like ripped and huge, and Cam Davis certainly fits the mold. And if he can play like Greg Jones, then Florida State will be in business. Lolohea is a guy I'm really excited to hear about and hear from, and his relationship with DJ Uyunglele, and they were teammates, and I think that was a big part of him coming here. Plus, he's also, I think, a couple of these defensive linemen are monsters, man. I wasn't there Thursday because I was at the Board of Trustees meeting, but the guy from Durajaye from West Virginia, they list him at 6'5", 280. But then when you look at the video from just like the chest up, he looks kind of lanky.
Yep.
280 pounds as a defensive end. I guess he said he's going to try to lose a little weight, but yeah, man, they're bringing some grown-ass men in the trenches, which is certainly good to see, and look forward to seeing those guys up close.
So I'll list the rest of the players in just a moment, but I know you weren't there Thursday, but you watched the interviews, and obviously, you get to talk to everybody on staff that spoke to the players. I know that Durajaye, Corey has put in a request for him to be in his wedding party. I think he loves that kid so much. I don't know if he's in charge of the ring for the wedding next month, but he's put him on the list. I think there's a call out there. Maybe some NIL bucks in there for Durajaye.
He's gonna see if they can. Man, he loves that kid.
Is there anybody that stood out to you? Maybe it's just because of human interest or any other angle that from last week's 8 interviews.
Man, you know what? I think they've all been impressive. I mean, everybody that has come and talk, and again, you just give Norvell and his staff credit because they've done a really good job of not just getting good athletes, but for the most part getting guys that are like well put together, and just mentally and physically. And and Durajaye, I'm gonna give Corey a grief about his column and his comments on the podcast because he's in love with that kid. But I mean, he's very impressive. There's no question about it. And really, like I said, all those guys are, and they handle themselves well. I was real impressed the first day of interviews. Malik Benson. I want to call him Magic Benson.
Wait a minute, though. There's something there.
Well,
wasn't create his nickname?
Wasn't there Magic Benson though back in the day? I think there might have been one, Magic Benton. But
there was a Magic Johnson. I know. I got to do the obvious thing.
I think there was a receiver that maybe went to Miami that was Magic. But Malik Benson, I thought he was super impressive. Just the focus, and then the Alabama guys, all the Alabama guys we've spoken to are really impressive. Just again, you're dealing with guys who, and I'm going to guess Marvin Jones Jr. is going to be the same, and a lot of these other guys as well. Just a real strong focus and a seriousness. And I think those are the guys that Norvell's approach and Alex Atkins' approach and Adam Fuller's approach probably resonates with, right? Like their whole sales pitch. And if you read these recruiting stories that Michael does, and he can talk about it when he comes on, but Mike Norvell's pitch to all these guys, and it goes down his whole staff, is don't come here if you don't want to work. Mm-hmm. And if you do want to work and you want to be great, but I'm going to push you to that. And you're not going to love me, but every kid that comes on a visit, that's what he tells them.
Yep.
And you got to think that the guys that resonates with are the guys that we're seeing in these interviews who are pretty sharp and pretty focused, right?
Well, yeah, to me, the thing that reassures me is you have a couple of kids that have spoken now on the record, and they're from Alabama, and they say, yeah, we get the same vibes as we get when we were with Nick Saban in Alabama. So they're not saying, wow, they do things really differently around here. They're saying, no, this seems about right. They had a praise. Malik Benson specifically had praise for the tour of duty, saying, now I see why they had the success that they had. But he didn't say, like, this is the most earth-shattering thing. Like, I think he looks at the program and the way it's constructed as like he was where he was coming from in Tuscaloosa. And to me, that's the biggest compliment you can give, because, DeBoer's regime is only beginning. They only knew the Nick Saban way of doing things in Alabama. And so when you have kids from an institution like that saying something like they're saying about Florida State and the no-nonsense attitude, I think that's quite refreshing. So let's get the list out for Thursday. 2 more Alabama players: linebacker Sean Murphy, defensive back Earl Little Jr. Looking forward to hearing from those 2 guys, in addition to 3 signees: defensive backs Jamar Howard, Kai Bates, and Charles Lester III. That is a full day. So that begins at 11 a.m. on Thursday. 5 players, Ira, 2 from Alabama, 3 highly touted defensive backs. And Ira, if they're anything like the crew that Florida State brought in last year, that specific group, you saw a different caliber of athlete coming to Tallahassee to play defensive back. They have overhauled the future of that room from the high school ranks, not the portal, but the high school ranks.
Yeah, and they're going to be a little lighter on experience this year, I think, and certainly going into next year. But the upside of these guys is I think, much higher. I mean, a lot of these guys that they signed last year, as you mentioned, Edward Joseph and Conrad Hussey and KJ Kirkland and Quindarius Jones, and they're guys that you could see really high upsides for. And then these guys that they just signed, as you said, interestingly enough, Jamar Howard, I think in the last on 3 rankings, I think he might have moved up ahead of Charles Lester. He really jumped up in those rankings. Kai Bates was obviously formerly recruited to committed to an SEC school. So that's and Charles Lester, everybody wanted him. So really talented group. I'm looking forward to talking to those guys. And then, Sean Murphy's going to be a huge, if he's as good as your guy, Clint Lamb, led us to believe. Was it Clint Lamb?
Yeah. Clint Lamb. Right.
From Alabama. After watching that interview, I was signing up for him to be starting alongside our guy Lundy. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's another good day.
They put together those cinematic recaps. Feel free, Florida State, to grab the Clint Lamb hype train for some of these players. It might sell some tickets for you to the spring game.
Earl Little too, right?
He's like, oh man, Earl Little can play now. I'm like, okay, all right. You sell it with that country drawl, Clint. Very nice. And then Friday, 3 more players: Tamir Hickman Collins, linebacker signee for Florida State, followed by Landon Thomas, who I can't wait to watch play. I think he fits this offense to a T. And I got to tell you, I were talking to Alex Atkins on signing day. He was so pumped about what Landon Thomas could be in the offense. And so I'm going to go with the coach. If he's pumped, I'm pumped. And the recruiting services reflected that for Landon, followed by the quarterback. Luke Kromenhawk will speak on Friday as well. So we are chock full of interviews this week. That is 12 more newcomers for Florida State to speak. There is a big name out there in DJ Uiagalelei who still hasn't spoken to the media. That will be coming with some more newcomers. But 12 players this week, Ira, and that's Wednesday through Friday. So between now and then, though, softball season begins on Thursday, and I know that there's a feature that you're very excited to share coming up on the site very soon.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. One of Lonnie Alameda's sort of top assistant for a long time, Travis Wilson, who's basically kind of handles the hitting, not all by himself, but he's the main guy on her staff. He's been here now over a dozen years, and he's got just a tremendous backstory. He's been a huge part of Florida State softball success, but he also really cool backstory. He's from New Zealand, was a softball player and then got selected or actually recruited to come play baseball, professional baseball. He was in the Braves organization for a long time, made it as far as AAA, had a really good minor league career. Now is an excellent coach and just kind of like a story of kind of a little bit of his background, his journey, and what he brings to Florida State softball. So I'll have that kind of previewing this season, and I think there's also interviews for softball tomorrow that we'll be at. Plus, and baseball's about to crank up as well. So a lot of other coverage besides just these football interviews. But man, yeah, from Wednesday through Friday, and then we'll have coverage of it probably 3 or 4 days after that. Tons of football coverage this time of year.
It's also the time of the year to make sure that your ACC Network Plus subscription is ready to go to watch a lot of these the diamond sports. It's a great time, and I'm going to be like so many Noles fans. First time I'm experiencing this, where it's going to be like 32 as a wind chill, 18 degrees, and I'm saying, boy, Hauser looks great. It's about that time, so make sure you guys get your subscriptions there all set. Florida Man in Texas. Will there be some coach speak in JCS this week? Well, I can tell you Florida Man in Texas, Seminole Headlines reconvenes tomorrow, followed by the Jeff Cameron Show for the rest of the week. Young Bryce Cameron was taken to see Terrence Mann down in Miami. That was a Sunday night game, so Jeff returns, I believe, first thing in the morning tomorrow. And coach speak, what do you think, Ira? Do you know if there is one this week, or you guys punting for
No, I think there should be. We did one last week. I think we should be able to do one this week. So yeah, no, it's we've been floating around in the off season what day it runs. Last week it was a little bit earlier in the week. So yeah, there was one last week, and I believe we'll have one again this week. We'll see.
All right, so rapid fire here before Michael Langston takes to the day. So recruiting questions. Got a couple of questions in the chat. First from Jane. Ira alluded to this, but why didn't Johnny play in the Senior Bowl? Reportedly maybe tweaked something, just minor, and stayed away. Is that what you were hearing?
Yeah, that's what I heard, but I don't know for sure 100% if that's true. Sometimes guys, several guys opted out. That's why Braden Fisk had to switch from one team to the other team because they had some attrition. And it's pretty common. There's a belief Jermaine Johnson didn't play in the game when he was coming out 2 years ago. A lot of guys feel like the practice is the most important thing. The game is a little bit more of an exhibition. Other guys feel differently. Plenty of top players play in the game. So Johnny didn't play in it. I'm not exactly sure what the reason was, but I don't think it was anything serious.
Garrett PCL, this is the last question for Ira, so make sure to hit the thumbs up at the bottom of the video before we get to recruiting talk. What's the over-under on FSU players getting drafted? I'll say 9.5. Ira, I think we might be going over on that number. What do you think?
Man, I need to sit down and look at it. Could be. Certainly could be. But I also, I'm curious about a couple of these guys that were great college players, or at least had one great season. I don't know, and that's one thing. As we look back on the, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. As we look back on the decision a lot of those guys made for the Orange Bowl, and I gave credit to, the Jaheim Bells and the guys who felt like they had to get healthy for the draft process. There's a couple of those guys on that team that were key players that might not get drafted and may not make it long in a camp. And, you wonder how they're going to feel about their decision to not play in that last game. Yeah. I think it's going to be a lot. It wouldn't surprise me if it's over. I need to go back and look at the official list to give a better estimate. But yeah, it's going to be a lot. But I don't know that everybody's going to get drafted. There are some of the guys who are really good college football players that I don't know if they're all going to get drafted, though.
So I'll do the quick game. You got the two receivers for sure going to get drafted. Mm-hmm. Jaheim Bell's 3, Trey Benson's 4, Jordan, I would think, of course, is 5. Yeah. Jared Versus 6, Braden Fisk 7. Now you got the 2 linebackers at you got Bethune.
I would think maybe one or both of them, but I don't know for sure.
We'll go with 1. That's 8. Renardo Green. Yeah, I think so.
I think, but I don't know for sure.
Okay.
Jarian Jones, I think, but I don't know for sure.
All right.
Fabian Lovett, I don't know. So there's some of those guys in there that could, and I could make a case for it, but I don't know for sure.
It's going to be close. That's a good number, Garrett PCL. Thanks for the contribution. Any other promotions, Ira, before we switch gears tonight?
Yeah, and we still have a couple more stories coming from last week's interviews. I think Corey did a story about the defensive lineman from Colorado State, Grady.
Little. Kelly.
Grady.
Yeah, Grady Little, like I'm a manager.
Yes. I think Corey wrote that story, so that'll be up on the site. I've also got my Jaheim Bell story from the Senior Bowl that I'll probably be running tomorrow. And then, like we said, the big Travis Wilson feature, along with the video that Aslan helped shoot, and you and Ben helped with the editing. So that'll be coming as well.
Stay tuned here to Warchant TV, and of course, head over to warchant.com for full coverage on all those stories. For being a slow time, it's pretty busy, so make sure to stay tuned. We'll be back in 15 seconds with Michael Langston. Good night, Ira. Thanks, man. Good talking.
Good night.
Contact Russ Vorhis for an auto quote today.
All right, his bags are packed, but he's not quite on vacation yet. It's Michael Langston here on Warchant TV. We're talking in the last 15, 20 minutes Monday Smash about the final of 3 junior days, maybe taking some portal questions, whatever you got for Michael. This is your last chance for a little while to ask him questions on Warchant TV, so get in under the buzzer and make sure to hit the like button underneath the video. Michael, how's it going, man? I see that smile. You're ready to go. You got your sunblock ready?
I'm good, man. I'm ready to roll. I will say a tip. I did see Johnny Wilson this weekend at FSU the day of the Senior Bowl. He didn't look injured to me, too much injured, maybe an ankle or something. So it's not like Brown breaking news, but I did see him. And then the question of over, I'm going to go with over on the draft picks. I think one guy y'all didn't mention is Keem Denton. I think Keem's had a really good year that I think that's a guy. So I think you'll get a little bit over, not too much, but yeah, it's going to be but yeah, it's been a long year, Tom. Exciting at some points, stressful at other points with the coaching situation, but overall I think a really good year, just for FSU, but also just it really I think it was almost a solid show me year for FSU last year, and I think they really delivered. And it's kind of feeling that way with a lot of recruits of how they view FSU of what they did a year ago. Even had a good interview with Caleb Cunningham yesterday on Sunday, and he was like, "Yeah, they should have been in the national championship." So it tells you the viewpoint of a lot of recruits that they feel like FSU was slighted and they should have been there, and they're a top tiered national team that people want to be a part of.
Michael, I'm going to ask you your favorite guy that maybe this past weekend, because they brought in another list of really good plays. You just mentioned one of them, a 5-star receiver.
Yeah.
But I was really, really impressed with one of the linebackers that you guys spoke to this weekend, and that is Gavin Nix. He's a 4-star, I believe, in the On3 rankings, but this guy is buttoned up, detail sound. He's very impressive. He feels like a great culture fit for Florida State. Like he values what Mike Norvell values. What did you learn about Gavin? And this is a personal question for me. Where does Florida State stand with that particular prospect?
Yeah. I mean, he's the first guy I've actually heard publicly that would come out there in interviews and talk about stability of what the stability was in FSU's staff, and really highlighted Mike Norvell turning down Alabama to stay at FSU. Really said that was big for him, and so I think that stuff's important. And outside of football, with the academics and the culture fit, and development. Every kid wants to get developed, but I think he's a kid that believes in he wants to see stability overall, not just okay, your staff's there for a while, but stability of what trajectory are you going at, what level are you going at. And he talked a lot about the trajectory of FSU, and that really stood out to me. I certainly feel like out of the 3 schools which we hear the most about, Miami, FSU, and Florida, you feel like the trajectory is best with FSU. So they're certainly going to be really high on his list. It's still early. He hadn't really named a favorite, but if you go by kind of the things that he highlighted, I would think that FSU, feels good about, kind of where they sit, I guess, going into that, late spring and summer.
Then who else impressed you this weekend? It could be a specific player, maybe a message that the kids, it seems like there was a message that across several interviews you heard. What stood out to you?
I think the other interview for me was Kobe Howard, a 4-star wide receiver out of originally out of Pensacola Catholic, then went to Western High School over there in Davie, Florida, and is now at Chaminade, which can't blame any kid for wanting to go to Chaminade. I mean, Chaminade's dominant. But his interview really stood out to me because he was the one I felt like gave off the strongest body language, like, I kind of know where I want to go, and I feel good about this place. And you could see how much they coveted him, but also just it was a covetousness of, I know if I wasn't playing football, these guys, I could trust them. I could lean on them. Where he broke his leg, I think, in his sophomore year. FSU was the first person, people to talk with him, like, "Hey, we want you. It don't matter. We're there for you." And there's a lot of personal connection to FSU. That was his first offer. So that interview, stood out to me a lot. I think there was several really good interviews, but I think those two, for instance, really just jumped out to me. Gavin, because of his details of stuff you don't hear as much from recruits, like stability, and then with Kobe, just the excitement level of just a school that stuck with him even when he wasn't a top tier recruit yet. He was basically a 3-star at that point and then got moved up to 4-star. But I think it speaks to the level of what they do with relationships and why those are so pivotal for them. And you see that a lot with a lot of these kids that are on campus that have visited multiple times, especially Kobe. But I think overall, just the relationships is, I think people want to see if the relationships are still kind of the main thing, and it is. It's still their top tier go to main thing that they want. They want skill set, but they also want guys that fit everything they're doing with their team. It's like they're not going to take every kid that Sometimes there's going to be kids that they take that are maybe a little lesser talent than the guy behind them, but this is a guy they trust and feel comfortable with. The Charles Lesters we talk about, the 2024 class, the Hakeem Williams, but those guys are great players, but they're also great fits to what your culture and what you want in your program. So I think it's a combination of both, and FSU doesn't shy away from. They're not going to shy away from that fit. Whether it's culture, whether it's skill set, they're not going to shy away from that. I don't care if it's a 5-star and then there's a 4-star and they feel like the 4-star is better and the skill set is really high on their list. They're going to go with that guy. So I think they've stuck with that. They haven't gone away from that, and I think that's important with kids because they want to see consistency, and that's the one thing we hear all the time with these recruits is the consistency of FSU. It's the same when you go there. Norvell's the same. The Norvell that they see visit their school is the same Norvell that they see when they come in for a visit. It isn't this guy that, okay, I'm going to act this way, but then when you get on campus, you're not going to see me as much. You're going to see him a lot. He is very, very active and hands-on, and they never drop down to what they are.
Yeah, and noticed that with Caleb Cunningham. The message again: if you don't want to work, don't come here. If you don't want to work, don't come here. And that's a 5-star receiver. You don't want kids that are robots, Michael.
Yeah.
But a lot of these interviews sound the same. To your point, like they're bringing in the same type of kid, and that means that they're sticking to their guns. Which, hey, they got him 23 wins last 2 regular seasons. Seems like pretty good guns to stick to. So Khalil in the chat wants to know about Landon Thomas and Cam Davis dropping so much in the overall rankings, the industry rankings. Do you think it's about an SEC school? Because both films, according to Khalil, are ridiculous. As much as you don't want to put your, the On3 network or any other network in the line of fire, Michael, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think they should have dropped, but I understand like they have a tough process of guys moving up, guys catching their eye that are different. But as far as those guys' talent, I don't think it really changes anything. And here's the thing, guys: stars don't matter when you get on campus. So I mean, FSU knows what they're getting. With Landon Thomas, I think that was more of Landon is used in a more blocking oriented offense of what he does. Now, Landon is very elite as a receiver. I've seen it several times. He will be used in that capacity at FSU, but you don't get to see that a lot. So that's going to drop him down. It's not going to make him as coveted, in the rankings standpoint. And then obviously Cam plays for a team, in Albany Doherty that not a great team, so certainly, he doesn't get the pub and he plays a lot of multiple positions. So that always is a thing where it twists somebody another way where, hey, we like this guy because he plays it all the time. But overall, I don't think anything changed as far as what On3 looks at those guys as far as how talented they are. I think it's just, one of those situations of what they like a little more. And but overall, I think the world of both of those guys. I think they're going to be. I got a kick out of Jeff getting such an excitement level when he watches the Seek and what Cam looks like. And I was like, well, Cam's looked like that all year, So that really isn't a surprise to me. But I know their FSU is very excited about both of those young men. I think they're both highly talented. I think they're both have a really good chance early to make an early impact. So overall, I'll be honest, I'm not trying to downgrade the question, but it's like I don't really get into rankings that much when it gets to late part of the year because there's so many dynamics that go into kind of what they're looking at, what guys they like a little better. But those are kind of few points I think of why they probably slipped a little.
Once again, Cam Davis speaks to the media for the first time as a Nole on Wednesday morning. Look for that on the channel. You guys really liked the talk about Cam Davis on the channel last week, so just making sure that everybody knows their new favorite player on Wednesday morning is going to speak to the media. Thank you, Khalil, for the contribution. Lee wants to know about those linebackers. He really appreciated the piece on warchant.com about that particular position. To what do you attribute the increase in linebacker recruiting and the traction Florida State has? What do you think?
Yeah, I told you this, guys, when I did the hot board for defensive tackle and linebacker, it was a lot different than what I did a year ago. I was really struggling a year ago to like, okay, which guys am I going to put in here to make this, kind of look good or whatnot. But I think a lot of it is production of what they've done on the field, development. I think kids see the opportunity to play there. They know 2 of their starters are gone. Lundy's a great piece to have back, so that was big news for FSU getting him back. But kids also know that there's a great opportunity to play there, and they also know when you get there, they've seen the development of these 2 guys, whether it's Kalen DeLoach and Tatum Bethune. So I think that's really attracted a lot of guys, and I know a lot of people. He gets a lot of like hatred overall just on the recruiting part, but Randy Shannon is a guy that is very liked as far as recruits of the connection personally, and then 2, his knowledge of the position. Like they're very high on that. Whether it does irritate me at times that there hasn't been top tier guys all the time, but overall, from his development standpoint, a lot of recruits have him in a very high mark as far as what he does with linebackers. So that's an attraction. But now we got to see if they can get some more of those guys. Got Ethan Pritchard. You'd like to get few more guys that are top tier guys, and certainly the last 2 weekends they've hit on a lot of guys that have been on campus. So with the list you saw on the hot board, I'll probably have even more added to that list because there's such an attraction of kids wanting to be in that linebacker room because of just what they've seen production wise. And I don't think, and there's no slight on Randy, I just think Randy is a certain guy where he's going to set you what there is, what it is, what they're going to do. He's not this guy I think is going to be in a crazy pitch guy where there's certain guys that have that electricity to him, like Patrick Surtain, Alex Atkins. That's just, I mean, Randy is a different way of how he recruits.
A question from Carol over on Facebook. She always asks good questions. Are we recruiting over numbers, but it will pan out over spring? And because of reduced total number scholarships over 2 years with the NCAA violation, are we okay with this, or does it even matter at this point in the era of NIL? What do you think about numbers, Michael, as it relates to what Florida State's doing?
The good old numbers. No, I mean, I think they'll be fine at the 85 mark. I think certainly there'll be some moving. I said this last time I was in here, a guy that's getting paid over 10 million a year. I think he knows what their numbers and what they can fit, who's leaving, who isn't. So I'm not really that concerned with it. I've seen it every year that, there's some juggling they have to do. And there's be attrition and stuff, but I think overall they'll nail their 85. And I have not heard any concerns of, hey, we got to really get this where we're under control. I think they feel under control with it.
The numbers always work. Leonard Hamilton was the funniest about that. I know that's a cliche, but Leonard always would say, "Don't worry about my numbers."
Yeah, don't count my ships.
Yep, exactly.
So I mean, I think it always works out, and that's a fun conversation to have. We have certain people on our PRB that love to talk about the numbers and how they're going to shake this, but like I said, the guy that makes over 10 million a year, I think he's going to know what his numbers are, especially what attention to detail type of guy like Mike is. Mike always plans ahead to anything that's happening. So I haven't heard anything outside of the realm of as far as intel that concerns me. So I'm under the assumption of people that I talk to that it's going to be fun.
I also gather in this day and age of football, I won't go into depth, but I feel like there's more flexibility in this era of college football too with numbers. Z-Chan, thank you so much, Z-Chan. We appreciate the contribution, the official DMD of Warchant TV.
There you go.
It's a simple message, Michael.
Thanks, Z. I can I'll use that. I'll
Okay.
use that when I get it. I will use it. Thank you.
Brush and floss twice a day. Thank you very much, Z-Chan. Darnell also, will Cam Riley be a Nole, and when? Straight to the point. What do you think, Michael?
Straightforward. I think it was a solid visit. I talked to Cam. Matt talked to him before I did. Matt did a really good story, really good piece. Matt really crushed it just on the share, and everything in Intel suggests to me that I think FSU has done the best job as far as on the visits. He also visited NC State, so he mentioned NC State, Florida State. I think FSU seems to covet him. So I'm not going to sit there and say win or hey, if they're definitely going to get him. I think they're in probably good position, but at the same time, um, he's not Darnell. He's not a early guy. So I mean, he's a May guy. So there's no rush. He can go back home, decipher these visits, see what one, make sure that what he's feeling is what he's feeling, and then maybe make a decision. But there's really not a rush for him to make a decision. But everything coming out of the visit, sounded pretty fairly positive. What I had.
All right, one fun question, then one more work question.
Okay.
If you're willing to share, Michael, you don't have to share. It's your own personal business, but Garrett's a good poster, and he asked in good spirit, I know. Where are you going on vacation? Are you visiting Ralph in Hawaii? What's going on?
I would love to go back to Hawaii, Garrett. That's where my wife is born and raised, so I'd love to go there. I don't think I'll have quite that time. We'll just do a variety of spots. Maybe hit up Asheville, North Carolina. It's a place where we have family there. There's several other places. We might even go visit to see a friend and friends in Texas. So I'm kind of just putting that with Diane, like she tells me where we're going, and so that's kind of she's had to handle me for all year for sacrificing stuff. So it's kind of my turn to just sit back and she tell me where we're packing our bags, and that's where I'm going. So it will be a variety of places.
Nice. Yeah. I tell you what, Michael, from about December 1st to February 1st, it's been the longest year we've had in a long time. Al, how many more solid recruiting classes will it take to reduce the portal to 5 or 6 players a year? So that's an interesting question, Michael, because I'll add to that. Will it ever be where the portal is only 5 or 6 a year? What do you think?
I'm not sure it will be ever at that level. Just because it's not that. I think a lot of people look at the portal like you have to do that, and it's like I think it's something that Mike really covets. As far as immediate guys that can help you. So does it maybe get to that point? Possibly, but I think people need to just um, soak in the fact that Mike is very big on the portal. He's very big on high school recruiting, but he's very big on the portal. It might get to the 6 point, but overall, I think every year you're going to see like possibly 8 or 9 because of how he covets guys that what he want. Here's the thing, guys. Mike's going to get the best player, that fits everything they do. Whether that's high school or portal, that's the deal. These guys count the same no matter if they're high school or portal. So I think a lot of people look at portal like it's almost like gathering a loan if you need money. I don't think they understand like it's still some of their best players have been vital from the portal, and it's to fill holes. So if you feel like there's a hole there and you feel like you can fit quicker with the portal, they're going to do that. But I think it could get to 6, but I don't think it's going to get to the 5 mark.
Makes sense. They're doing better in high school recruiting, but yeah, Michael, you're right. Just every year, quarterback position was the one that started it before NIL, before the portal.
Yes.
You had to recruit 2 a year. It felt like because somebody was going to get mad and leave. So now that's every position. So
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing with these high school kids. They could leave anytime they want. I mean, the guys they just signed, these kids in 2025 could just say, you know what, I'm gone. So um, there's, and I've had this conversation with different people in the FSU Intel where there's more of a comfort of portal guys because there's a proven aspect of they wanting to prove themselves, and the chances of them going somewhere else is not likely. So I think in some cases, I mean, I've seen it where FSU put 2 years into a guy like Keldrick Falk, and then in 1 week, Hugh Freeze gets the job. They lose him in a week because of all 2 years that you put into that. So I could see why the portal is attractive to them because you can get a guy, you can do it, and he's going to want to come in, and he's probably more ready than that guy in high school. So people need to understand and accept that the portal, they're people too. They're people, they're players. It's not a detriment. It doesn't mean oh your program suffering or their high school recruiting suffer. You look at the high school class they just signed in 2024 is phenomenal. It's a great class, but I think Mike wants to have that balance of portal and high school. He's going to have that, whether people like it or accept it or not. That's what
Yeah.
it's going to be. And the portal isn't going, I think, anywhere. I think it's only going to get stronger. More people are doing what FSU's done. You look at all the teams that really went portal crazy: Ole Miss, Louisville, Ohio State. All these teams went portal crazy. These are top tier teams, so I think it's going to be something that's very popular around the country and when it comes to portal recruiting.
Vacation is always popular, Michael. I hope you have a safe
Okay.
one, and we'll talk to you on the other side of it. Florida State recruiting comes back to life in March. Michael's going to exhale. So we appreciate, Michael, all the coverage on warchant.com and Warchant TV. It's been fun, but I know you're ready for a break, so enjoy it.
I am. I want to thank everyone all year for the Monday Smash, all our recruiting chats. I want to give a big shout out to our guys. Tom knows the incredible job he does for our interviews, that we get up so quickly after the visits. And I cannot say enough great things about Matt Lassier this year, of what he's done team wise and recruiting wise. I've never felt so comfortable going wherever I'm going on vacation to have Matt there, answering your questions. I don't think we can I could put enough emphasis on the job that he's done. Obviously, a great hire by Gene, and I think he's been terrific. And lastly, I love all my guys. I love all the guys I work with. I love Tom. I love Aslan. I love Jeff. I love everybody. You got to love the people you're around, and I think it's such a dream team type of atmosphere that we've created. And I appreciate everything you guys do. We appreciate you guys coming in here, but I want you guys to know, just more exciting things are coming, and I'm so excited to be a part of the team and all the help that we get doing the coverage that we give you.
Maybe I'll see you out there, Michael. I might sneak a weekend somewhere.
There you go.
In
Maybe I'll go to New York.
There you go. I mean, look, the city's right through that door. It really is. Like the window faces the city.
Like
right
it.
on that
Like
door.
it.
So, hit me up if you're making it up to JFK
I
or
will.
LaGuardia, and we'll come scoop you up. One more note before I say goodnight. First of all, thanks to Z-Chan. Thank you to Khalil. And then thank you to, who was it? Let's see, Darnell, for your contributions to the program. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Director Ben behind the scenes. Our sponsor, of course, as always, is State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. But on a personal note, happy birthday to Kathleen Lang. Mom, 39 never looked so good. Hope you're having a great 39th birthday. Again, it's amazing how you're always 39 years old, but hope everything is good in Clearwater. So for the team, my name is Tom Lang. Hit the like button underneath the video and head to warchant.com. Good night, everybody.